Welcome to the Swike Podcast, the only podcast that shares the stuff you didn't know you needed to know about jobs, careers, and life. The Swike Podcast, the stuff I wish I knew earlier.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the Swike, Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier, the podcast. I'm your host Luki, and for today's topic I'd like to go a little bit more in depth on LinkedIn and leveraging the engagement and connections functionality on the platform as well. So if you haven't watched the LinkedIn Basics where we talk a little bit about the platform and your profile, then go back and listen to that episode. And for this episode, we're going to go a little bit more into kind of the best practices or some of the things not to do on the platform as well. So one of the things that I encourage folks to do is look to engage on the platform. So on your feed, you'll have news resources, links and posts that are shared by other people in your network, and some people just kind of scroll and allow that to pass by. What I encourage folks to do is start liking, sharing, and commenting on those posts because it'll help the algorithm actually find the types of information that you're looking for. And it'll kind of tune itself so that it finds like the area or the industry or the companies that you're interested in and give you more and more of that ongoing. And what it also does is starts building a relationship in the community. So if you've ever posted anything on LinkedIn, then you feel good when someone likes your post. You feel good when someone comments on it or shares it to their network as well. So it feels good that you're doing that sort of stuff. So reciprocate and do that to the other person. And ideally even give first because I'm a big fan of karma. The more you give, the more you receive. So oftentimes it starts with giving and then you'll start receiving. So engage on the platform, be part of the community. It's fairly easy to like a post, but it gets a little lost because a lot of people will like posts. So if you can make some sort of meaningful comment, read the article, read the post, and you can either echo what you liked about it and say, oh, I really like this part, or you can add commentary. Oh, and in my experience, I've had this happen, which is similar to what you mentioned there. Or you can ask questions. Say, oh, I appreciate what you said about this, but what do you think about that? And oftentimes those will start a conversation, and that becomes an easy way to make and further a connection. So what I can encourage folks to do is leverage those connections. So start connecting with people that you've met previously, either at school, at a previous job, at networking events, at even sporting events or pickup or interest groups, and start connecting broadly. And then leverage the platform to deepen the relationships, or if you can, use things like text message or email or other modes of conversation or communication, then that works as well. But leverage it to connect with sometimes people you don't necessarily know. Go and search on LinkedIn for people whose job you want, or whose people who are doing really cool and interesting things. And be curious and interested and add value. So if you're not familiar on how to network and do that, go and listen back on one of the previous networking episodes, and that'll give you some fundamentals on that. But for LinkedIn specifically, you'll have the option when you make a connection to send a personalized connection request. And I encourage everyone to do so, right? And the advice that I always give is to always send a personalized connection request. Because if you think about what that connection request seems like in person, in real life networking event, it's like going up to someone, tapping them on the shoulder and looking at them and just waving, right? You got a big name tag with all your experience and all the information about you, but all you're doing there is sitting there, right? You haven't started a conversation, you haven't said hi, you haven't done anything. All you've done is connect. So how strange would that be if you were in a networking event like that? So that's definitely something that you want to do in terms of adding that personalized connection request so that person knows what you're looking for. And then when they accept and they give you a response, to start the conversation, because some people hope that, okay, they accepted my request and hopefully they'll start the conversation. Well, no, their acceptance is actually the continuation of the conversation. So you might have to prompt them and say, like, as something as simple like, thanks for connecting, how are you doing? And then try to engage in the conversation that way. So taking a look at how to connect and build that relationship with people, leveraging a personalized connection request is definitely something that you want to make sure that you use. And for those, again, who took a look at the resources on networking, my answer to pretty much every how to network question is to care, right? So you now have to translate care on LinkedIn. So you don't want to be kind of that salesy or that pushy person and go right for the sale and say, hey, can you help me get a job? Can you refer me to this person? Can you do whatever? Well, they just met you. They know nothing about you. Well, they can read a little bit of your profile. And once in a while, someone will be helpful. But for the most part, like, people like to be wined and dined, or they like to be treated as someone special. So connecting with them and building that meaningful connection, getting to know them, being curious, being interested in all those things and guidance we have on networking is something that I encourage folks to do. So making sure that you send a personalized connection request and you care for other people is something that you need to make sure that you do on LinkedIn. Now, LinkedIn, they don't have functionality built into the tool, but you can create a calendar invite or use some sort of tool or Excel spreadsheet or whatever it is to remind yourself to reconnect with folks. And depending on the size of your network connections, then what you can do, one of the suggestions that I do recommend to reconnect with folks is to go in their text messages, scroll all the way down to the bottom, and message that person. So you can do that for LinkedIn as well, but oftentimes, depending on the number of connections that you have, you might have more to go through. So it might take you a little bit of time. But if you can manage that, really focus on the quality versus the quantity of connections, that'll make for stronger relationships and investment in your future later on. So go into your messages and scroll down and start messaging those people who you haven't connected with in, let's say, 4 months, 6 months, or even longer. And if you can, try to find those people who you've never messaged at all, right? So there might have been a time where you connected with people or people connected with you and they've never messaged you. So my question is, what's the point? Why have connections that you don't know or they don't know? Why not look to build a meaningful connection? Now, that person might not reciprocate and they might not respond back, but at least you made the attempt. And it might take a couple of weeks, sometimes months, hopefully not years until they respond back. But it's at least you're making the effort to build those meaningful connections and try to be engaged and interested, right? So take a look at that, and same things on the networking side. Look to add value. Oftentimes on LinkedIn, it's pretty easy to make connections. So you had a conversation with person A and then have a conversation with person B, and in your conversations with person A, you had some interests or things that they were curious about, and person B is also. So you find a connection. Oh yeah, I think you would really appreciate the insights from person A, and you connect them together. I usually do kind of a double permission and ask, hey, person A, I met this person B, I don't know them too well, or whatever context you have, but I think you have a very interesting conversation. Would you mind if you got introduced? And I do the same thing with person B. Oh, I previously had a conversation with person A. I think it would be interesting for you to connect. And if both of them say yes, then you make the connection. If one of them say no, then, well, you just have to notice, oh, apologies, the person wasn't exactly interested, or they're busy, or put some sort of rationale. And then go about the relationship and see if you can continue to build that. So calendarizing that will allow you to help build that connection over time. So as long as you're looking to care for that person, then you're building that connection. And one of those things is, you never know. This person who you just met in a couple of months might move to a company that you'd want to join, or they might be hiring, or they might be looking to be hired at a company, and you could refer them into your company as someone that could add a ton of value, right? But keeping in mind that sometimes just those superficial connections aren't great, so you want to try to add value. So if you've watched the other add value posts, it's your experience, your connections, resources, or your time, and doing that over every couple of months, over a few years, that can definitely build that connection. So it translates quite nicely into the networking world. And the great thing about LinkedIn is it's a little bit more strategic networking, because it's not like a networking event where anybody is randomly there who may or may not be in the industry. They might just be a guest of someone. But these are people where it actually tells you what company they're working for, what role they're in, assuming that they put it on their profile, and you can connect with them strategically. So if you want to get into a particular company, in a particular industry, a particular area, guess what sort of people you should be starting to connect with on a regular basis. And again, you're trying not to use them. You're trying to build a meaningful connection with them, and then over time, you'll be able to grow that into something. So LinkedIn, in my opinion, is a very powerful and great profile, mainly on the connection side, because really you have access to pretty much anyone who is on that platform. Now, they are more than welcome to ignore you. So one thing that you want to consider is adopt a sense of, don't have a sense of entitlement. When you connect with someone, don't assume that they owe you something or they have to connect with you. Connect with them, send a personalized note, and kind of be as helpful as possible. See if you can add value to them as quickly as possible, and then build on that connection, right? And then if they don't respond, well, at least you gave it a shot. So if you've heard that quote from Wayne Gretzky, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, so you might as well get into that. So leverage LinkedIn as a great platform to kind of strategically connect with folks. Make sure you care in terms of building meaningful connections. Make sure you always send that personalized connection request, and try to develop your brand and your voice there. And when you couple that with engagement in terms of connecting with folks, then that's a great way to do that. For folks that are interested in figuring out, well, how do I connect with someone? Well, when you do a search and you find someone in an area that you want to be, look for commonalities. Some of the commonalities that I look for are people, right? So if we have a common connection, well, first of all, could I ask my common connection to introduce us? That would be a warm connection instead of a cold connection. So those always go a little bit better. Something else could be some sort of experience. So you want to ask them some questions, some guidance about one of the areas that they went into. Now, it gets a little bit kind of a slippery slope if it's their work at a company that you want to get into. Then it kind of seems like, well, I know why you're asking me that. So it's easier when it's a previous company or some sort of other interest that they're connected with and they're not directly there. But if you have to and talk about their current role, then oftentimes you can ask for advice and guidance, and that's usually more people are more than welcome to share kind of their insights in there as well. Again, engagement. So if they post, if they like or whatever, then oftentimes engaging with them would be great. I would often like a post or comment on a post, and I would say, well, I saw your post on whatever it was. I like the information. Thought I'd connect to see if I can learn more, right? So something as simple as that could be helpful in having you connect with that person and starting that meaningful connection there. As you further and get better at connecting with folks and coming up with those personalized messages, then you'll start getting better and better and better and better at it. And it'll start feeling less awkward as you go through the process as well. So that's it for this episode of the Swipe podcast. And hopefully you learned some useful information on leveraging LinkedIn for networking and engagement, and so you can build those meaningful connections. So that's it from me, and see you on the next episode. Thanks for joining us on the Swipe Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier, the podcast. If you like the podcast, please subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you found this podcast. And if you can give us a review, that would be very appreciated. Feel free to contact me on LinkedIn at Luki Danu, LUKIDANU, and the same on most social media platforms. And I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks. Bye.